So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the Wide Awakes launch call. I want to start by acknowledging the land we all live on. I'm out of Sele, I'm on Lenape land. The Lenape steward the land that is northeastern woodlands. During the 1700s, many Lenape were pushed west by settlers, colonizers who broke treaties and inflicted really devastating violence on the Lenape people. And now most Lenape reside in what is present-day Oklahoma. Can people share what native land they're on in the chat? Thanks, everyone. Honoring the land we occupy is really an essential part of what it means to confront white supremacy and begin to heal the historic and ongoing violence that has been wielded against Indigenous people. And right now we're seeing rapid changes around understanding Indigenous rights, Indigenous sovereignty, and what exactly we mean when we say it's long past time to give the land and water back to its original caretakers. So on this call, we are going to cover a lot, but we're going to take some time to appreciate what's happening in this country right now and really how momentous this moment is. And then we're going to get really real about what it's going to take to change this country. And we're going to share our plan to take action this month and beyond, and how together we are going to change American politics forever. No big deal, right? But are y'all with me? Woo! So a little bit about myself. I'm out of Sele, I use she, her pronouns, and I come to this work with really deep rage and love for my family and for my people who are fleeing violence and climate chaos in their homelands and are met at our border and in the streets with guns, dogs, cages, and empty promises. And I want to be real with you. Never in my wildest imagination would I have predicted that I'd be living through a moment like the one we're in now, where the people of this country are working together in unprecedented solidarity to really bring the hammer of justice down on the fault lines that have been baked into the foundation of this country, the fault lines of white supremacy, of colonialism, of racial capitalism, of intergenerational poverty. And this is really the moment that this broken system could all come crumbling down, but it's up to us to take action and make it happen. And the crises of our broken healthcare system, our broken economy, deepening structural racism, and ever escalating, ever present climate catastrophe are all coming to a head right now. And the people who are supposed to be in charge, the people who are supposed to be protecting us are either asleep, sleeping through the crisis, or are actually, even worse, the very architects and profiteers of this death economy. And those injustices share the same root cause: colonial white supremacy and a capitalist economy that invests in extraction and violence instead of care and repair. And we're all on this call right now because I know you all feel the rage that I'm feeling right now. I know that we are all wide awake to the impacts of these systems, not just the effect they have on the air we breathe and the water we drink and the places we call home, but to the effect of the economic oppression and violent brutality being inflicted upon marginalized, oppressed people. And reality is that unprecedented crisis requires all of us to step up and take action collectively. And it's time we wake these people the fuck up, right? Because we've been wide awake for a good long while now, and we're not going back. And if we can't sleep because rent is due and we're about to get evicted, neither should they. If we're lying wide awake at night because our friends and our families are sick from a pandemic that could have been contained, then we'll make them lie awake with us. And if we can't sleep because police are brutalizing and killing Black people, we're gonna make sure that those screwing us over can't sleep either. And what does this mean? This means that we need a different tactic to target our politicians in this urgent time. Our leaders are sleeping through this crisis and we can't occupy their offices, so we have to bring the crisis to their doorsteps. And we're gonna mobilize outside the homes of politicians in the middle of the night to wake them up to the devastating realities we face. That's right, y'all. No justice, no sleep. Y'all are with me, I feel it. And this isn't just your regular protest, this is a daily haunting to make it clear that our generation is a force to be reckoned with when it comes to the revolution in the streets and at the ballot box. And this is a historic moment, and the political terrain is shifting under our feet. And that's why later on this call, we are going to ask you, every single person on this call right now, all 350 of us and climbing, you're going to ask everyone to take action with us, but more on that later. Now I'm going to pass it to Nikayla.
Thank you for that very great intro. Really sets the tone here. And before I get into the details of this action, I wanted to say a few things. I want to acknowledge that I feel scared. And I know a lot of you share the same feeling, that over these next 100 days and beyond the election, that things are deeply uncertain, not just for the outcome of whoever wins, but for the dark and violent and white supremacist forces that we all know to be at work. And yes, it is very scary, but we are very brave. And we're brave because we feel our power as a movement. We know we have the moral authority, and we stand on the right side of history. And this idea that we carry of a just and livable future is for the common good, for all of us. And in this moment, the wonderful thing and the beautiful part about an idea is that it can never die and it can never be defeated. We give this idea life, our life, and we share it and carry it in our hearts. And through that, it takes on a life of its own. And even when you feel like there's no one listening and you are screaming into the void, our voices, if we speak this idea loud and brave enough, it ripples across the sea of change. And even if we can't see it, it gathers strength and power and lands as a tidal wave on a far and distant shore. And I like to think that when I feel lost or defeated, it's not about what we could have won, but what we could have lost. If not for our movement and growing our little hubs, if not for being a political antagonist and throwing on our sunrise shirts and getting in the streets, how different this world would look. The party wouldn't give a shit about climate change, the nominee wouldn't have a climate plan, and so many of us would feel so lost and deep in climate grief and despair. And if not for our work, the world would be a darker place. So over these next few months, even if we don't win anything in the moment, our words and actions carry farther than we can see or understand. Our idea of a just and livable future will carry beyond us and our lives and change the world, because in so many ways it already has. And I think these wide awake actions are a perfect example of this. Never in their wildest dreams would these young abolitionists in the 1860s ever imagine that their tactic would go on and be replicated by a national movement in 2020. They helped shape history then, and they're doing it again now. History is whack as hell, and we never know what will happen, but all we can do is be on the right side of it and hold hope through times of uncertainty. But yeah, what are these wide awake actions? Time to tell you. So the Wide Awakes were a pro-abolitionist mass youth movement who turned anti-abolitionist representatives' lives into waking nightmares. These young people grew up in a world just like ours, and they took sustained and radical action to match the moment. Wide awake to the moral injustice of slavery, they called out slavery supporters, criticized their own party, which had dragged their feet on abolition as weak-willed and complicit. They ensured the safety and the democratic rights of those who envisioned a world where slavery was abolished, rallying around pro-abolition speakers and politicians, serving as defenders and poll watchers. And in the next half decade, actually, so keep in mind, this is the beginning of 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected, slavery was abolished, and visionary Reconstruction began in the South. Our generation must fight for true abolition and complete the unfinished work of Reconstruction. That's why we're all here, is that the work was never done. And that energy in the Wide Awakes is what we keep seeing today. We as young Americans have changed politics forever, and we are only halfway through the year. The uprisings for Black lives are the broadest protests in movement US history, and for the first time ever, we are seriously talking about defunding the police, and investing that money back into our communities. These conversations, they would not have been possible even a few months ago. So all this to say is that we have some serious power in our hands. In 2020, we changed American politics forever. And in 2021, my dream is that we bring these failed and corrupt institutions to their goddamn knees and we build something new, something founded with ideas and policies we know to be right and just and necessary. So that was a lot. And I'm definitely feeling a lot. So if you could drop in the chat if you are also feeling a lot, but you're still here with me, that would be great. Okay, I'm seeing lots of yeses. So I'm going to continue on with that green light. Okay, so this month-long siege that we're going to wage to break down these anti-democratic walls and fear our future. So if you sign up for a Wide Awake leadership program in your school, your neighborhood, or your college, this is how it's going to go down. And let me just say that I love the term siege because I feel like that's exactly what we're going to do. And I'll encourage you to go read the Wikipedia page for what a siege is, because have that expectation. So first, we're going to start by exposing the crisis. The government has not cared about us for a single day of our entire goddamn lives. We know this to be true. They have failed us at every step. And in this war, big bank bailouts, crushing debts, school massacres, police and ICE locking up Black and brown people, while we're all here, the climate crisis, and now, of course, COVID, right? So all of this shit is the anger we feel when we look back on this disaster of a country, and it is the urgency we feel to change it. It's time the rest of the world knows that this country not only has screwed them over with coups and stealing their land and resources and bombing them, but we have also been screwed over too. We've been failed and forgotten, and we need to tell the world that we're not taking this bullshit anymore. That they will see us, they will feel us, and they will hear us until they are deaf with our demands. And as this election approaches, as I've already said, we are up against so much. And on election day, we're going to see polling places in Black and brown neighborhoods shut down, while polling places in upper class suburbs remain open. We'll see the thousands of young people who moved because of COVID being told that they can't vote anymore. So that's where we come in. We need young people to be able to register and vote in the thousands. We need to give them something beyond the Democratic Party to vote for, because we're at the cusp of defining a new normal. And it's our job to get out on the streets, talk to our friends, get in those DMs, slide right in them, and drum up an uncontrollable wave of support that will allow us, not the Democratic Party, to determine the agenda for 2021. So what does that mean? That means organizing in Black and brown and working class communities and colleges and in high schools. It means making sure that Republicans don't try to take advantage of mail-in voting to rig or steal the elections after ballots have been cast. On election day, it means forcing polling places to stay open when officials try to close them, and shutting down schools and workplaces on election day so that everyone can vote without worrying they're going to lose a paycheck. So that day, November 3rd, election day, if you were not aware, it is November 3rd, make sure you vote. That will only be the beginning. From there, we're going to launch 2 weeks of sustained escalation to deliver a generational mandate, our generational story for a new normal. Every politician we elect, we're going to hold their feet to the fire. A multiracial cross-class youth coalition is emerging, and we are absolutely fucking ready to go to battle. But it can't all begin in November. Rome was not built in a day, and it was also not sieged in a day. In fact, it was sieged over the course of 1 year and 9 days, which was a fact I learned today. So the entire fall leading up to the election, we need to be building our people power to absolutely flex. Every single day from now until the election is a day we're preparing for ballot time battle and the post-election eruption of our pent-up anger and anxiety and my sad girl climate grief, but also a lot of love for each other and the country that we're trying to save. So it starts right now. You need to sign up to take part in the Wide Awake Leadership Program. And we have a program for you. If you're organizing in your neighborhood, your college, maybe your HBCU or your high school, If you're Latinx and you want to organize other Latinx folks in your area, we have a specific Latinx Wide Awake leadership program. No matter who you are, how new you are to Sunrise, if you want to build a society that cares about all of us, a just and livable future, this program will help you every step of the way. So here's how you do it. I'm sure someone's going to drop this in the chat, but you go to sunrisemovement.org/leadership. Very easy, leadership. We're all leaders, remember that. This application takes about a minute to fill out, but you can go ahead and get started. So if you're in a hub and you're wondering, because I am a little bit, where does my hub fit into all of this? This strategy was rolled out last week with a lot of hub coordinators. Our whole movement is going to be moving in unison to expose the crisis, defend the vote, and demand a new normal after the election. Those are the 3 phases of our siege, which I'm very excited for. But right now in this moment, we have one priority, and that is to host wide awake actions all across the country so that everyone everywhere can see the total and complete massive fucking failure of this government. That means showing up to houses of politicians everywhere who have failed us and telling them, my favorite line, no justice, no sleep, or wide awake. So Sunrisers in Louisville, Kentucky were actually the ones to launch this tactic. It started out as a protest to honor and demand justice for Breonna Taylor. It spoke to so many people that it went viral. And since then, it has spread across the country to fight for abolition, to fight for Palestinian rights, undocumented immigrants, and more. Protesters even showed up outside of the Portland Marriott or Trump's secret police sleeps, chanting, no justice, no sleep. This tactic is so powerful, and it can be pulled off by even a small group of people, but don't just take my word for it. I'm going to pass it to Fernanda from Louisville, Kentucky, to share her story about what it was like to step up for her first wide awake action.
Amazing. Wow. I have so many chills, so many snaps throughout all of that. Would love to see y'all hype our speakers up in the chat. I unfortunately cannot see all of your beautiful faces, Wi-Fi issues, calling in from phone, but my name is Fernanda. I use she, her pronouns. I'm 18 years old and I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. And I'm here to tell y'all why I am so hyped for the Wide Awake Leadership Program, why I'm so hyped to see mass movement building happen to transform this country, and why I'm so ready to train up young folks in this fight for a more just vision and future. So I'm going to take y'all back a few weeks. It's the weekend of Juneteenth, and I'm beginning to plan for this wide awake action that's happening in Kentucky that's going to target Mitch McConnell. So being really honest with y'all, I was tired. I remember feeling worn down because protests had been taking place for weeks, and we had only been met with excuses and inaction from our mayor, from other so-called leaders, and as usual, from our Senator Mitch. And hubs across Kentucky were uniting to plan an action that had goals of amplifying the uprisings all across Kentucky and across the country, and demanding that corrupt leaders like McConnell look us in the eyes and see that we are wide awake. We're wide awake to mass injustices that are taking place. We're also wide awake to the solutions we need and to the people and systems that have maintained these and maintained the status quo. So in natural action planning fashion, we had gone to bed at 1 a.m. the night before the action, and then on the day of, we gathered at 5 a.m. in the morning in a grocery parking lot with signs, banners, noisemakers, and a whole lot of rage. It was still dark outside, and there was only light that was coming from the street lamps and from our cell phones. And I was one of the first to arrive with 2 of my friends, and then more people began to show up, and then more, until we were a group of around 35 people. And we were folks from across the state, from the hood to the holler, from Bowling Green, Frankfort, Louisville, and Murray. And it was hard to make out who was who. We all had masks on. We were all wearing all black. But regardless of all of that, we knew that we were united and why we had gathered at the crack of dawn. And so we began singing songs and got hyped up that we were about to go do this thing. We were all tired and still are of McConnell's BS and energized at the movement that Booker's campaign and the movement for Black Lives had ignited. So after some chanting, we began walking down Bardstown Road, which is a major street in Louisville, towards McConnell's house, right as the sun was beginning to rise. And we rang bells and we chanted, "No justice, no sleep, no justice, no sleep." We arrived and we set up with a banner in the middle of us, circling in front of his home. And in that moment, we brought the crisis that Kentucky has been facing for months, but also decades, to McConnell's doorsteps. We had speakers and chants and signs that read, "Rise up, wake up, Mitch, and look us in the eyes." And it was powerful. As dawn approached, neighbors came out onto the street, wondering what the heck was happening, and some even cheered us on. After the super powerful action, so many of us, including myself, just completely crashed. But when we woke up again, we were met with countless headlines, both locally and nationally, sharing a message of how a group of organizers had occupied in front of McConnell's home, exposing that leaders like McConnell have been asleep throughout all of this and have really only even been activating the Senate to enrich their elite and their friends. And for the first time in quite a few weeks, I felt hope. And that hope only comes when you build up your community, when you confront oppression and corruption, and when you win. I knew that if we could replicate this in mass numbers all across the country, corrupt leaders would have no possibility of continuing to sleep until they give way to the power of the people. And so us, all of us on this call, as young people, we were born into crisis. We inherited a world that was defined by record income inequality and deepening structural racism and the existential threat of climate catastrophe. And we know people like McConnell, they don't care about us, and they never will. And those corrupt politicians need to step out of the way, because we are a generation who is woke to the problems, but also wide awake to the solutions. Because our generation deserves good paying jobs, Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, a defunding of police, and a chance for a livable future with justice for all. And we know we need to channel our rage and inspire confidence that social movements are the best way to smite the politicians in power. And this campaign is going to show the public what a threat to power looks like. And so we're in a moment of crisis, in Kentucky and also across the country. And we must confront the rampant racism that we still face and bring forth real leadership who will fight for dignity and justice. And so that's what brought me on this call today. And that's why I'm making this choice right now to recruit friends, fellow Sunrisers to the Wide Awake Leadership Program, because I know it will equip people with the skills, the resources, and support to organize in their communities and bring this moral clarity and vision across the country. And so I'm asking y'all to join me. Our generation is rising up. We are wide awake and we are just getting started. So if you're in the hub or you're ready to take action, let's see some noise in the chat. We're going to keep dropping the link to sign up, and I can't wait to see those numbers grow.
Yes, thank you, Fernanda. I know you can't see the chat right now, but there is so much resonance. I've never seen so many plus signs in my life. Thank you so much, Fernanda, for sharing that powerful story, and thank you for your leadership in taking action and proving that it's really up to all of us to step up together and seize this moment. And our tech support is dropping the link in the chat. But again, if you are part of a hub, which is a local Sunrise chapter, or if you're just really fired up and ready to just jump in and like plan an action in the next few days, go ahead and click that link that Victoria is dropping in the chat right now, smvmt.org/wideawake-action. She just dropped it in the chat again. Go ahead, sign up, just check the box that says that you're interested in planning an action. We can hook you up with coaching, support, guides, whatever you need to get started. So thanks again, Fernanda. And thanks everyone for showing all of your love and resonance for Fernanda and Louisville in the chat. But now I want to take us into exactly how this action tactic and this siege fits into our larger 3-phase plan and strategy. I saw some folks in the chat asking for the specifics, and we're going to get into that right now. So the standards set in the past 50 years of US politics are essentially melting. Capitalism is stumbling around punch drunk, and whether you're a cynic or an optimist, nobody truly knows what's going to happen next. Protest has become the new normal, and it's up to us to actually keep it that way, right? Because we got to push the envelope, we got to radicalize more and more people, and we are the ones that have to force Congress to pass the first pieces of our vision, which ends in abolition. But there is just one problem, and despite the potential for change that's coming, we still have to deal with Biden, right? And I know literally every time I open the news, he's gone and said something else terrible. The Democratic Party is banging us over the head with, we got to defeat Trump, but we know that defeating Trump alone is not going to stop police brutality. It's not going to stop the climate crisis. It's not going to be enough to deliver the world that we deserve. And if we're being real though, I just don't feel that excited about knocking thousands of doors and making tens of thousands of phone calls for Joe Biden. And I know it's important. I'm going to do some of it anyway, but I also know that if we're going to motivate millions of young people to not just vote, but to be really ready to mobilize our generation and fight to have a future in this country, no matter what happens in November, we can't just be talking about turning out to vote on election day. That just by itself isn't going to cut it. And I want to offer a way I think about it from the wonderful Angela Davis. And this is a piece of wisdom from her. Both parties remain connected to corporate capitalism, but the election will not so much be about who gets to lead the country to a better future, but rather how we can support ourselves and our own ability to continue to organize and place pressure on those in power. And I don't think there's a question about which candidate would allow that process to unfold. And this really speaks to me, right? We need an administration we can control. We need to be able to pull the strings if we want to be able to implement the visionary future we need. So, you know, the way I'm thinking about it, I'm not fighting for Biden, I'm fighting for the terrain for all of us to be able to step up and actually organize into 2021. So our most powerful role right now is to invite our generation into a vision and a movement of movements that is bigger than the Democratic Party and bigger than this one election, right? We need to call folks into a vision about our generation taking over. And right now we are building a force that is powerful enough to strike fear into the hearts of politicians on either side of the aisle. And it will help if we populate those sides with politicians who are open to listening in the first place. So how are we going to do this? We're going to do this in 3 ways. First is the wide awake actions, which we've already talked about this, right? It's time to expose the architects of this crisis for who they really are. It's a real mask off moment. The second way, we're going to tell the story of a bold and broad youth coalition that is ready to go to battle. We've already confirmed that other youth movements like United We Dream, March for Our Lives, want to figure out how to go in on this plan with us. And we're talking with youth groups leading the movement for Black Lives and other youth partners to build this youth bloc, this multi-issue, multiracial, cross-class youth generational identity. And the third way is that the reality is that it's going to take a lot of the nitty-gritty organizing, you know, the friend-to-friend conversations, people talking with everyone they know, and yes, even talking with random people in your community. And this day-to-day work is really the backbone of what makes movement successful, and building those relationships is key. So all of these things are going to be critical to making an impact, and we need to be the ones who give our generation something to be inspired by, something to get hype over, right? Because the so-called leaders of this country are certainly not doing it. But if we can light that fire, we can light that fire for ourselves and everyone in our lives, then young people can swing the election and define a new normal for our society. And this isn't just some far-off fantasy, right? If you look at the numbers, we have the numbers to do it just in our age group. If every student in Philadelphia alone had voted, I believe these numbers are from 2016, if every student in Philadelphia alone had voted, we would have flipped Pennsylvania. That's a huge opportunity. And it's honestly ours to miss. So if we do our jobs right, then we will help millions of young people see their revolutionary power to transform the country, and the political class, the political elites that have been in power for far too long will see it too and be terrified. And that will not only get our generation out to the polls, but it will set us up for the fight to redefine our society, to rebuild something new. Okay, so what are the details? What do we actually need to do it? What do we actually need to do? And so I'm going to pass it to Leah to give the details of how we think this plan is going to roll out.
Hi. So we're going to have 3 phases, which Araceli already went over. So the first is expose the crisis. The second is to defend the vote. And the third is to demand a new normal. So let's start from the top. We have phase 1, expose the crisis of our failed government. We were born into crisis. We inherited a world defined by endless wars, skyrocketing income inequality, deepening structural racism, and the existential threat of climate catastrophe. I know growing up, I have felt this deeply ingrained within my bones. This trauma has been living with me for 24 years, and I'm over it. And so every day of our lives, we've gotten the same message. The government cares more about playing political games and protecting their billionaire donors than they do about our actual lives. I'm not just talking about the federal government either. It's on every level. They are wronging us. So for the next 100 days, we will haunt these architects of the death economy. We will march into their homes at midnight and make it plain and simple for them. We are wide awake to the role in which they are crafting this nightmare. And they are about to be too. So we're done asking nicely. We're tired of signing their petitions, tired of calling and visiting their offices. Through it all, they've done nothing but fucking ignore us. So now we're going to take actions they cannot ignore. This phase 1, we will do everything in our power to let the country know just how deeply the problems have been because our government has failed to act. We have to tell the story the government is trying to sweep under the rug. And I want to level with you. I know 2020 has not been the year we all imagined. And I know it, you know it, and honestly, it's hard to plan something around this year when things keep changing month to month. Like the COVID response that the government gave, the rent not being able to be like paid for, the circumstances that control the government itself caused, or hell, even the federal agents literally snatching protesters off the streets. The government is failing us left and right. So we have to be ready with innovative tactics to take action. So for our second phase, we're going to defend our vote, and this is going to be our election. So as we ramp up to the election, we know there's a lot that's going to be stopping Black and brown people and young people from voting. Young people who are moving are already being told that they're ineligible to vote. Polling places are being shut down, and we've heard that Trump has called for 50K poll watchers, which we all know that means there's going to be an army of terrorizers to scare Black and brown people from voting. It's going to be rough. That's why we need to show up like never before. This election is not about one candidate. It's about our generation showing up in the streets and to the polls to make sure our leaders know who holds the real power. So we need to make sure everyone can vote. This means we're going to be calling for a national-wide work and school walkouts to make sure that the only thing that people are worried about doing for November 3rd is going out to cast their ballot and voting. So this is where the Wide Awake program will come into place as well. And in our hubs, we will heavily lean into Principle 2. We grow our power by talking to our communities. We'll talk we'll talk to everyone we know, not to just come out and vote, but to also defend the vote at the polls with us after we win the election. So we want to see every single person who has attended a protest this summer to make their voices heard on November 3rd. And it will no longer be a day where we quietly cast our vote on our own. Election day is the day our generation shuts down the entire country, marches to the poll, and we have a unified voice that shows those in office just how powerful we really are. So, the third phase is time to demand a new normal. So what's going to happen after the election, right? The haunting is over, but that doesn't mean we stop taking action. It's time to win some shit. So after showing our power on election day, we'll actually start to dictate how we rebuild society. This won't just be us alone. And we know it won't also just be about the Green New Deal, but it'll be about defining and demanding a new normal for our society. And that's the time when we actually have a chance to define what the Biden administration will be guided by and who they will answer to. And that's us, y'all. So remember, some of the biggest institutional victories that have happened in this nation have been under moderate candidates. The Civil Rights Act that legislated justice for millions of Black lives across the nation was passed under a moderate candidate, Lyndon B. Johnson. And the New Deal legislation that gave countless Americans Social Security and pensions that we still benefit from today was passed by another moderate candidate, FDR. So none of that happened because they were nice or because, you know, they were just feeling good that day. It happened because there was a movement of people who are relentless and did not let up until their demands were met. And we have to do the same thing. We can't let moderate Democrats get away with watered down policies that maintain all the injustices of our society and leave Black, brown, and working class people behind. Period. We're not doing that. Oh, we're not doing that no more, y'all. No more leaving people behind. So when we kick Trump out of office this November, and quite frankly, any other Republican that we can, the stimulus packages set to pass in early 2021 will present the greatest opportunity to pass the first steps of a Green New Deal that we could have to come for years. There will be an influx of trillions of dollars of investment. But for that to happen, we young people, we really need to get out there and fucking fight like our lives depend on it, because it really does, y'all. And not to mention, we'll be sending a signal to the global community that any plan to create jobs or boost the economy must, absolutely must include racial justice and plans to stop the climate crisis. That influence is at stake here. So that's it. We have our three phases. We're going to highlight the crisis. We're going to defend our vote, and we're going to demand a new normal. I don't know about y'all, but I'm super excited for that. So are y'all ready? I'm going to pass it over to Naomi to tell us how Sunrise will be able to support hubs during this time.
Wow, thank you, Leah. I'm hyped. Thank you so much. And I really cannot wait to make this plan a reality and to make this all a reality. And to be honest, y'all, like, it's gonna take each and every one of us, every single, like 365 of us on this call, y'all. It's gonna take all of y'all. It's gonna take your sisters, it's gonna take your friends. It's gonna take every single one of us to make this our reality, right? It's gonna take every single one of us to do what we can and bring ourselves to the movement. So that's why in a moment, I'm gonna ask you, every person on this call, right, to join our Wide Awake Leadership Program. It's a way for young people across the country to expose the failed leadership of our government and demand a new normal. I mean, people will be meeting in small groups and have support through trainings and coaching to run a group in their communities. Like, you'll be taking action to expose the crisis of failed government, drumming up energy towards the election, and then taking action after the election to demand a new normal where the government actually cares for its people. If you're in a hub, which are the Sunrise chapters in cities, like y'all just heard about all that. So if you're in a hub, you'll take the Wide Awake actions. But for y'all who are really new to this organizing, I need y'all to sign up for the Wide Awake Leadership Program. Now, maybe you're feeling nervous about talking to your friends and neighbors, taking action, and building the movement where you are. If you are, that's okay. Like, I know for me, when I first took action, November 2018, I went to my congressman's office and I did an office visit. I was nervous. Like, I literally texted like 200 people. My like thumbs got sore, and I was just like, to like come out to this office visit with me, and I was just like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm so nervous. Like, I felt it in my stomach, y'all. And I remember like being in the subway, going up to my congressman's office, and like, what am I doing? Like, I had a bunch of people with me. I'm like, what? Like, can I do this? Am I ready? Am I the right person? Right? But for us to win, we need every person in our generation to lead. And we've got a lot of support to help you every step of the way, to help you to take that first step to, like, you know, make our dream a reality. And so we're going to kick things off in the Wide Awake program with a multi-week training. You'll be attending with one or two other people who are going to be leading the Wide Awake program with you, and wherever you are. So these trainings are a chance to learn organizing skills that will serve you for the rest of your life. You'll get to practice, plan, and find community with like others who are doing the exact same thing than you are. So yeah, I mean, some of my closest friends come from this movement. So like, really, it's super exciting. And then once you're through the training program, you get to start organizing wherever you are. Like, maybe it's at your historically Black college, maybe it's at your high school, maybe it's the neighborhood where you grew up and moved back because of COVID. I'm also at my parents' house, you know, shout out to y'all. Wherever it is, you get to start organizing. And that means planning your first Wide Awake action. And I'm not gonna talk you through the plan till the election because we just heard it, but I wanted to share one more thing. All along the way, you will have a coach, I emphasize this, to talk you through anything that might be difficult or intimidating. It'll be another Sunriser who has had experience organizing before, someone who has your back and can help you build a successful action and program wherever you are. All right, so I'm gonna summarize real quick. As a part of the program, you'll have a coach, you'll have trainings, you'll be given the skills to win for the long haul. You'll be given the support you need to become a leader in this movement. If you've never done this before, we need you to sign up right now. If you've done something like this before, we need you to sign up right now. If you're nervous, that's okay. Confronting the political and corporate elite will require all of us to step out of our comfort zones. And honestly, it's gonna be so fun. Like, it's gonna be fun, yo. We have dedicated programs for high school students, HBCU students, college students, Latinx folks, and any young person ready to organize their community. You'll be joined by thousands of other young people who know what's at stake and are ready to fight for a better world. So we're ready. I think it seems like people in the chat are ready. I think they're ready to sign up for this program. Is that right? If you're gonna fill this out, put an exclamation mark in the chat, please. I need to know who's starting to fill this out. I'm seeing so many exclamation marks. All right. So we're actually gonna play a song, and we're gonna give you the full song to fill this form out on this call right now. Vic, hit the music, please. If you can. Here we go.
Now I like dollars, I like diamonds, I like stunning, I like shining, I like $1 million deals. Where's my pen? Bitch, I'm signing. I like those Balenciagas, the ones that look like socks. I like going to the Tula. I put rocks all in my watch. I like texts from my exes when they want a second chance. I like proving niggas wrong. I do what they say I can't. They call me Cardi, banging body, spicy mommy, hot tamale, hotter than a Somali. Virgo, Ferrari, hop up the stoop, jump in the coupe, big dip on top of the roof, flexing on bitches as hard as I can, eating halal, driving a lamb. So that bitch, I'm sorry though. Got my coins like Mario. Yeah, they call me Cardi B. I run this shit like cardio. I'm in district in the chain. Certified, you know I'm gang, 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 gang. Drop the top and blow the brand. Oh, he's so handsome. What's his name? I need the dollars to just beat it up.
chambean pero no jalan. Tú compras todas las Jordan, a mí me las regalan. I spend in the club, what you have in the bank. This is the new religion bank, el latino gang. Yeah. Trato de hacer dieta, pero es que en el closet tengo mucha grasa. Ya mudé la Gucci pa' dentro de casa, yeah. Cabrón, a ti no te conocen ni en plaza. El diablo me llama, pero Jesucristo me abraza. Guerrero como Eddie, que viva la raza, yeah. Me gustan boricua, me gustan cubana. Me gusta el acento de la colombiana. Como me ve el culo la dominicana. Lo rico que me chinga la venezolana. Andamos activos, perico, pim, pim. Billetes de 100 en el maletín. Que retumbe el bajo, Bobby Valentín, yeah. Aquí prohibida mal, dile charitín. Que per pico le tengo claritín. Yo llego a la disco y se forma el motín.
Diamond District in the jam. Certified, you know I'm gang, 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 gang. Drop the top and blow the brand. Oh, he's so handsome, what's his name? I need the dollars to just beat it up like piñata. Tell the job to close the curtains. That bitch make you nervous.
Como Celia Cruz tengo el azúcar. Tú que va medio y se fue de pecho como Ginny Luca.
Great. All right. If you were able to fill out that form, drop a heart in the chat. I want to see everybody who's going to be joining this new program for new organizers, right? New organizers are like folks who are just getting into the movement for the first time, maybe in the movement a little bit. You know, I want to see who's joining us, who's going to get leveled up. Let's see who we got. Oh my gosh. It's like hundreds of hearts, y'all. Whoa. All right, cool. I'm going to pass it over to Araceli.
Thanks, Naomi. Wow, thank you, everyone. Got Melissa joining. We got Aaron joining the leadership program. Andrew, so many people ready to be leaders. And I saw this question pop up as a song was playing in the chat, but yeah, the leadership program is for folks who are totally new to organizing, need that extra support to get jump started in their communities. But if you're part of a hub, or if you are just like so fired up and ready to pull off a wide awake action where you are, you can sign up at the link I just dropped in the chat, smvmt.org/wideawake-action. Just click on that link. Click the box that says that you're ready to start organizing an action, and we'll hook you up with the coaching, support, and the guides to make sure that you can pull off this action and start haunting those architects of the death economy right away. And I want to be real. You know, in 6 months, we could be watching the establishment scramble to rethink everything they ever assumed about the influence of our generation and who they really need to answer to. We could see our demands, our solutions, and our vision gather so much traction that even the mainstream media won't be able to write us off. And when the new year starts with a despot, a fascist forever removed from the presidency, it's a new coalition that will bridge the divides of race and class, that will guide the nation toward a new era of community and care. And all of us on this call, all 315 of us on this call right now can be part of that. And it starts tonight, and it starts right now with all of y'all signing up and taking action. And if we want all that to happen, the work starts today. We can choose to take the course of history into our own hands, to keep organizing together in solidarity with people across the country. The revolution is here, y'all. It is outside our doorsteps, and it's up to each and every one of us to decide who we are. Are we the vanguards of this revolution? Are we the torchbearers, the flag carriers, the chant leaders, the schemers, and the dreamers? Are we wide awake on this call and ready to bring the revolution to the doorsteps of our leaders from dawn until dusk? I think we are. I feel the same energy on this call that I feel when I step outside with my cardboard and Sharpie sign and my pots and pans ready to make some fucking noise. It really is up to us, and we are ready to rise to that responsibility with all of you. So I'll see you in the streets. Tech support, if y'all can drop that link, those links one more time in the chat to sign up to either pull off a wide awake action starting maybe this week, some of y'all, or sign up for the leadership program. Thank you all so much for being on the call. all over, almost 400 of y'all were on this call tonight. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all in the streets.